The suicide vests used by the ISIS attackers in Paris were made by a highly skilled professional who could still be at large in Europe. That's what the intelligence and the security experts are saying. All 7 of the militants wore identical explosive vests and did not hesitate to blow themselves up. Experts say this is a worrying change of tactics for jihadists targeting France, unlike the attacks in London in 2005 where bombers' explosives were stored in backpacks. Friday attackers used the sort of suicide vest normally associated with bombings in the Middle East. That's the latest that is coming in. Let me quickly cut across to Lavina Tandon, my colleague who's joining me live from Paris for more on this. Lavina, it's a very important piece of information that has been revealed by the investigators.
Yes, absolutely. This entire terrorism networks are now going to another level. They are using different forms of. Let me just first, before I go there, I want to show you this if you can. These are the signs and the marks of that we can still see. This is the shop that was still shot, and people there, the Bataclan and the coffee shop are all in the vicinity. So they were out in public wearing those suicide vests and shooting at people as well. So they could wear that vest as well, carry Kalashnikovs. They are getting better and better equipped by the day and using different tactics everywhere. But one thing is common: they want to create that terror not only in one place but everywhere, and they're coming from all sorts. The roots are very, very deep. They are the investigators are still determining whether it was the Syrian passport and the guy was the same who went in, but still we could say that these people, the roots are coming from Syria to Serbia to Macedonia, going from Belgium into France. So nobody now is untouched by this entire regime of terror, the marks of which we can still see in Paris. And I have just spoken to a few people who have been going around to just figure out how they feel about it. The shock still remains. Yes, they want to live on, but the shock still remains as to how this could happen and what could happen next.
Lavina, you were talking about the suicide vests that these people are wearing, a highly sophisticated operation. It seems that has taken months of preparation. What about the identity of other attackers and the clues that have led the investigators to Belgium?
There was a car, black seat car with a foreign number plate that led the investigators to Belgium. That car was apparently rented, but it crossed the borders 2 days before the attack, and therefore they went there and found out that this entire colony of people who live there from the Syrian origin. Also, this car was used by these people here in Bataclan, but there are more. Passports is another thing that was found on people in stadium. Now they thought that there was an Egyptian passport found, a Syrian passport and Greek asylum seeking papers, but it seems like now the Egyptian passport belonged to a person who had come to see a match in the stadium, so possibly not of the attacker. But we still are figuring out what the Syrian passport and other identification passports and details that are coming through, but we can still see to an extent, and this is what the police is investigating here as well, is what is the descent of these people, where are they coming from, because the roots of this terror have to be traced and addressed. And now that the G20 is happening, it's a perfect time for the world leaders to think about it, because two things are clear through this attack. Number one, it's just not Paris or France. The roots are very deep-seated in Europe, and they point to Middle East and even go beyond to Afghanistan. So the whole world has to come together, leave the hypocrisy aside, and address the issue of terror and how that needs to be tackled.
All right, thank you so much, Lavina, for bringing us all those details from Paris. Well, staying with the story first, visuals of the arrest in the Belgian suburb of Molenbeek. India Today has the first visuals of the arrest of one of the 3 suspected accomplices in this attack. The very arrest we have been, in fact, informing you since morning. The arrests were made a little earlier today on the outskirts of the Belgian capital, Brussels. The identities of those arrested is not yet confirmed. There is speculation there could be more accomplices or even terrorists who managed to flee Paris after spreading the carnage. Well, let me tell you more about Molenbeek. It is a suburb of the Belgian capital, Brussels. Most of the residents in this suburb are of Syrian descent. They are Syrian refugees. In fact, many describe this as a den of terrorists. This is one of the poorest areas in Europe. In fact, it housed few terrorists linked to various attacks earlier on the European soil. 3 Paris suspects arrested are all residents of Molenbeek. Well, Lavina is still with us for more on this. Lavina, earlier we were talking about that there was a car from which there were some Kalashnikov rifles, the AK-47 assault rifles were recovered by the police. Who do these rifles belong to, and have the police been able to identify the owners of this car or the occupants of this car?
The ownership of the car has led to Belgium, as you have said. All the identification is happening, and the investigation continues because not much is being revealed exactly about these Kalashnikov rifles and the owners of the car, but fingers are pointing to Belgium and the refugee areas in and around there, and also towards Greece.
You know, Lavina, specifically talking about the refugees and the people, the fingers that you said are being pointed out on the refugees, and specifically one of the attackers is believed to have come from Syria as a refugee through Greece. How is this going to change the influx of the refugees and the way Europe is treating the refugees so far?
It will really have a very big impact. Prime Minister David, there has been a conflict of thought between Europe and Britain, and this entire incident will strengthen the hand of Prime Minister David Cameron, who has been hesitating to take refugees. Now, I have been to Calais in France personally, shot with the refugees, spoken to refugees, and I have seen that though there are a lot of refugees who have come from Syria, yet there are a lot of people who are economic migrants as well. And these Syrian refugees now, because the problem is not being addressed, are getting aimlessly they're ending up being part of such attacks. They have nothing to lose. The futility of life is hitting them. There is no solution that is being provided.
Okay.
Therefore, I feel these refugees are now turning in some way into fundamentalists. Now, this will bring a very, very huge impact to the influx of refugees. Now, the Europe had said that we will with open arms taken the refugees, and fingers were pointed at Britain because they were not doing it. Now the tables could turn. That is one thing that could change. Now people will say, see, we did say that with every refugee, every 4 refugees, the 5th one happens to be someone from the ISIS. So that side has been strengthened, and therefore this entire humanitarian crisis will continue.
Stay on with me, Lavina. We're just coming back to you. A lot of planning and logistical support for the Paris attack seems to have been originating in the neighboring Belgium. In fact, evidence found in the terror locations are leading investigators to the city or the locality of Molenbeek, Belgium, which houses a number of Syrian refugees. In fact, 3 suspected accomplices have already been arrested from the region. Not only this, one of the terrorists reportedly entered European Union masked as a refugee through Greece this October, leading to fears that more terrorists may have entered the Schengen visa area through this route. This is exactly what me and Lavina were discussing just a while back. Let me very quickly bring Lavina back and ask her about the security fears and the preparations for the United Nations Climate Change Conference. In fact, Lavina, Paris it will be hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference in just a couple of weeks. Now, after this attack, what are the fears and how are the security apparatus preparing as the world leaders will descend there?
The security already in Paris is on high alert. Climate change is going on and the security will be of the highest order here. The military personnel are already involved. The world leaders, Paris has been saying, France has been saying that we will go ahead and the security will be tightened up to the highest level. That is what they're doing, and climate change also will be shadowed by this entire question of terrorism and facing it. So very interesting point, and something interesting could come off that as well. But as we see now, even now, despite the fact that there are so many military personnel here, life goes on, but it is not the same.
Thank you so much, Lavina, for bringing us all those details. Well, moving on, according to the latest information, the deadly attacks in Paris were being planned for the past 9 months. In fact, 2 terrorists have been identified till now. One of them a Parisian, the other a 15-year-old Syrian who reportedly entered Europe through Greece, masked as a refugee. There are also reports that a woman attacker was among those behind the carnage at the Bataclan theatre. Well, French police have identified one of the gunmen who blew himself up at the Bataclan concert hall, a 29-year-old Parisian native, Omar Ismail Mustafa. A close source to the probe said investigators are searching the homes of other friends and relatives of the killer. Let's take a look at how the suspects came to Paris and carried out the attack.
According to latest information, the deadly attacks in Paris were being planned for the past 9 months. And a lot of planning and logistical support for the deadly Paris attacks seems to have originated in neighboring Belgium. With 2 terrorists identified, the Greek government has confirmed that the fingerprints of one of the terrorists has come up in their database. The individual registered himself as an asylum seeker on a Greek island in early October. Greek sources believe another terrorist may also have passed through. And then there's the Belgian connection. According to French police sources, the multiple terror attacks in Paris seems to have their origin in Belgium, specifically in Molenbeek, a suburb of capital Brussels. And video footage and witnesses say one of the cars used by the terrorists had a Belgian number plate. The black car was rented by a French national who lives in Belgium. He and 2 other passengers were pulled over on Saturday in a different vehicle and they were later arrested.
The file has been opened for the terrorist attack and participation at the activities of a terrorist organization. Plus, multiple arrests and search warrants have been executed. These operations are still ongoing.
Investigators say that the deadliest of the attacks, the Bataclan hostage siege, was carried out by a group of 3 men, and one of the fingers of the suicide bomber outside Store de France was found at the scene. He was later identified. The French national had never been to jail, but he had been tagged as a potential terrorist. Members of his family were taken into custody late Saturday night. What is now known is that the terrorists were split into 3 teams, one with 3 terrorists deputed to attack the Bataclan. The other team of 2 was sent to the National Stadium outside Paris. The 2 detonated themselves in a span of 10 minutes. The third team, also of 2 terrorists, went on a shooting spree in some of the best-known areas of Paris. They managed to kill nearly 40 people.
Well, now let's take a look at who exactly is Omar Ismail Mustafa. Well, Omar Ismail Mustafa was born on November 21st, 1985. Mustafa was born in a Parisian suburb. In fact, what is known to the police is that Mustafa had a petty criminal record. Criminal record shows 8 convictions between 2004 and 2010. Identified as a high priority target for radicalization, he already was on the target, in fact on the watch list of the police. Probe is also on to determine if he took a trip to Syria. He was identified by his severed finger found in the rubble at Bataclan Hall. Police has now taken his brother and father into custody and are searching their houses as well. The ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attacks that wreaked havoc across Paris. Reports say ISIS supporters have been celebrating the attacks in Paris, sharing their views on Twitter with the hashtag Paris is burning.
A grisly bloodbath on the streets of one of the world's best-loved cities. As panic gripped Paris, memories of the bloodshed at the Charlie Hebdo office earlier this year weren't far behind. For both these attacks, the dreaded outfit ISIS took responsibility.
C'est un acte de guerre qui a été commis par une armée terroriste, Daesh, une armée djihadiste contre la France.
Just days ago, the ISIS released another video specifically targeting France.
Explosez la France, réduisez la France en miettes.
The Friday the 13th nightmare in Paris is being read as a backlash for France's proactive stance against the ISIS in Syria and Iraq.
Their faces uncovered, speaking French with French accents. One of them said, "You killed our brothers in Syria."
Just last week, France had announced that an aircraft carrier would be deployed in the Persian Gulf. Despite the ISIS terror threat, the French premier said the war on terror would be unsparing.
We will be ruthless in our fight because when terrorists are capable of carrying out such atrocities as this, we need to face up to them. France needs to show determination. It needs to come together and stand united.
While the people of Paris scramble to pick up the pieces in the wake of the worst attack in their city, the jihadists celebrated the attacks on Twitter with a boast of further targets in London, Rome and Washington. Can the Western world unite and scuttle the ISIS onslaught? Bureau Report, India Today.
Hospitals in Paris are now facing a serious crisis of blood for patients who have been admitted in these hospitals after the ghastly terror attack. Even with 19 blood donation centers in Paris and citizens, along with tourists queuing up to donate blood, supplies are still running short due to sheer number of patients. Here's a report.
He's 30 years old. He was with friends last night at Bataclan. If anyone has any news or has seen him, if you have seen him in hospital, please let me know.
Desperate for news, a woman asks for help finding her friend. They'd been attending a gig at the Bataclan concert venue, the target of a deadly attack. When the assailants opened fire on the audience, she lost him in the crowd. She's been contacting hospitals and police stations trying to find him. Here at the Georges Pompidou Hospital, nearly all of the injured have been identified.
Even when I worked in Afghanistan, I never saw 60 people injured in one attack. These are injuries of war because assailants used weapons of war.
During the night, doctors came from other hospitals to help. By morning, there were long lines as people waited to give blood. But supplies are still running short.
It has been non-stop since this morning. Unfortunately, we have a lot of patients who need this.
Is there a blood shortage?
Yes, a serious shortage.
The 19 blood donation centres across Paris saw an influx of Parisians and even tourists hoping to help. Officials have called for donations of blood to continue in the following days.